Where do you think you'll see the most pushback with something like this?
Well, again, it comes back to if it doesn't have an inflation in growth component, we see from when welfare reform was done, we had very little spending on welfare, but other states had big spending. And then when it was block granted, we were block granted at historical spending. And our spending stayed very, very, very low, and theirs stayed very, very, very high. And generally, when block grants are done, it's really more about the federal government saving money than the state government. And so that's why I believe there are issues here. One thing that's really important is we have to keep going in the direction of cost containment and getting the best bang for our buck. We shouldn't reject any idea out of hand, and we should listen to it, look at it, and see if we can use the best ideas that come from that. I mean, let's look at health reform. Many of the ideas in the Affordable Care Act were ideas that actually came from conservatives 10 years ago, or 15, and it's just the truth. So people, it ebbs and flows. Some things today people will say, oh, that's a liberal idea. No, we just have to work to. I think the real problem is, and I really want to be clear about this, if we're not sitting down and taking the best from different proposals, we'll lose good ideas. So the worst thing is to say just because a Republican or a conservative has it, or just because a Democrat and a progressive has it, that it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I'd just echo that. We all participate in a political process to get here. We get elected by people in our district that largely reflect their values and so forth. When you get here, it's all about Texas and what's good for Texans. Yeah, we fall apart on certain issues. And we had one of those recently on voter ID, and we got through it and so forth. But I will say that 99% of the issues that we work on, and a lot of these are healthcare issues, it's really about what's doing best for Texans out there, and they don't really fall into one political philosophy versus another so much. And Chairman Coleman is exactly right. We got to be about the business of trying to deliver higher quality in a more cost-effective way, because whether you're talking about Medicaid or whether you're talking about the private insurance market, healthcare costs are skyrocketing out of control. And we've got to get our arms around all parts of the business in order for us to really rein this in. And there are things that both Republicans and Democrats believe in that will make a difference. And I feel I have no problem in latching on to things that Chairman Coleman promotes. He's been about this business for a long time, and I greatly value his opinion when we talk about issues. And the worst thing that we can do is continue to make the same mistakes over and over. And having folks with institutional memory like Chairman Coleman is incredibly valuable, no matter who's kind of in the driver's seat, so to speak, whether it be Republican or Democrat.
Do you ever get any backlash from some of your Republican colleagues for doing stuff like that?
No, not at all, because I think really for the most part, when we're here, we're looking for the best ideas for Texans. And so I think that's really the spirit that really the majority of the people bring to this body. There are going to be, again, those things that we fall, to either side on, but those are really few and far between.
Really few and far between. More, and I think our leadership in the House has really done a good job of making sure that everyone's heard. And if people can be heard, then the ideas can be shared, and that's what creates finding the best solution to a problem, and that's what we really should be about. What is the best solution for everybody in Texas, for all Texans, for Texans? And that's why I've enjoyed the last two sessions. Because, yeah, I don't win on everything or anything maybe sometimes, but certainly I know I'm heard and listened to, and that's important.
With the federal health care reform, do you feel like the state of Texas is spending too much time pushing back against this?
Well, let me say this. The way, and Chairman Zerwas and I, he was chair of the federal legislation select committee. The way the bill is set up, it's set up that we can reject, but we can't. We can not do an exchange, by the way, and the chairman wrote an excellent exchange bill, or we can not do the high-risk pool, but the federal government's going to do it. And I think that it would be better for Texas to decide what kind of exchange we want rather than the federal government telling us what kind of exchange we're going to have. So the way the bill was crafted very, very smartly, that, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do, but you can't not do anything. And if you don't, we'll come in and do it. So that's the part that I'm concerned about, that we won't get to put our stamp on these things as Texans.
And that's Chairman Coleman was the vice chair on that select committee, and he also has an exchange bill. And so the two individuals who kind of led this effort from different parties are basically promoting the same thing that we know needs to be done with regard to federal health care reform if the law continues to stand as it is today.
Right.
And I've taken the position that it will. Now, there are lots of things going on to try to change the bill but at the end of the day, I want Texas to be, in the driver's seat with regard to its health insurance, and specifically this health insurance exchange is kind of that piece of the puzzle that allows Texas to stay in that position. So we both have bills that are working on it. It's a reflection of our sense of this is a very, very important part of meeting what are the expectations in health care reform. But more importantly, it's very important in meeting what we know the expectations of Texans to be, and that is that we need to continue to maintain the primary role in the regulation of our healthcare market.
And I agree with that totally. I mean, I just absolutely totally agree with that. I'd rather not have the federal government telling us what to do.
Do you feel like what the Attorney General in other states are doing is actually going to have an effect on changes that could happen with that law?
We just don't know.
I think that's it. We don't know. What we do know is that if there aren't those challenges to it, it won't happen. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I can't tell you if it is or not, but there's a lot of smart people who feel like there is some questions of constitutionality to that. And so that going forward and kind of shining a light on that is something that we're seeing played out right now. Those are things, whether you're for that or against that, at the end of the day, those are still unknowns as to whether they happen. What I do know, I'm pretty certain about, that there is a requirement for an exchange to be in place in 2014 based on the law as it exists today. And if we don't do that, then the federal government is going to come in and do that. And I just don't think that any Republican, and I won't speak for my Democrat colleague on this, but any Democrat in Texas wants to see that happen, because the federal government is just not going to understand what we need. That's right. Need that. Understand the needs of Texans as well as Texans understand that.
And we can do a better job of putting an exchange together that works for how Texas has done things, and that's what brings insurance companies into the exchange. Insurance companies can stay out, and we want them in. And the only way to do that is to have them working towards the solution with Texas stakeholders and legislators, and that's just why the bill was written, so that the exchanges would be done by the state.
And the stakeholders are all on board with this. You have the Texas Association of Health Plans, the Texas Hospital Association, Texas Medical Association. You have small business supporting it, the Texas Association of Business, and Texas Restaurant Association. I mean, anybody that you can almost imagine has said, yeah, Texas needs to do an exchange. And the reality is whether the health care reform bill continues to exist as it's portrayed to be or not, there's probably a value for an exchange in the state of Texas to meet small business needs, and perhaps even an individual market if the market gets affordable for an individual to buy on.
And I like the way Chairman Zerwas put it together as a connector. It connects people with the appropriate plan and price for their needs, just like Travelocity. So I think that we're getting used to doing those kinds of things, and it helps people shop for the best product for themselves or in their family. I think it's an excellent, excellent, excellent idea.